And we're live.
We're
Senor,
like,
I'd like to open up with a quote that I heard our friend Patrick Bet David say,
okay.
which was, the true test for a man is not how their kids turn out, but how their grandkids turn out. Because the grandkids are a the grandkids are the test whether you were able to create leaders, right? Because in your children, you hope that you can do good and you have control of that. But in your grandchildren, they don't stay with you. They go home to their families at night. How do you look at that quote? How has it applied to your life? Because the verdict is still out. I guess you can say on both.
Oh, yeah. Well, um, the verdict is still out on the grandkids for sure. Um, I'm very proud of my kids. Okay. I think that uh, my kids are good people, good human beings, productive in today's society. And so, they're good people. What more can you ask? Uh, they're not malevolent. They don't go out to hurt people. Um, I don't see them with vices that I can see, So overall, if I didn't know them and they weren't my kids, I would say, hey, this is a pretty good look. This guy turned out okay. I would say, nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect in this world. But I think that Patrick Bet David is right on the money when he's talking about the grandkids because that's one generation removed, so to speak, right? So you don't have control of, you know, the raising. And even when you do, for example, in our case, in Mom's and I, we had 3 kids, and all 3 of you are different. So you were raised with the same ideas in the same household, eating the same thing, following the same rules, the core values, and um, all of you are good citizens, but all of you are different in many ways. So the grandkids, yeah. And I know I have a lot of friends that have grandkids, and that's what they think about. They don't think necessarily of their kids anymore in term, worrying about what career, this and that, because they're pretty much set. So, but they do worry about their grandkids and
Yeah.
how the world is going to be when they grow up, and so forth and so on. Okay, and
Yeah.
so, but you should only worry about the things that you can control. And easier said than done. I don't practice it that well. But Jordan Peterson says, um, let your children struggle a bit. Let your grandkids, you know, because that's what's going to prepare them for the real life, and you're not going to be able to be there at all times. And you
Right.
and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you see the story of an immigrant family comes here, works super hard to build something, and raises their kids a certain way or tries to. And then as each generation, as it continues in each generation, some of that work ethic or drive or for necessity or whatever it is lost. And so it's an interesting statement, right? The true test is, how do your grandkids turn out? Because I just look at it as, can you create leaders who are able to raise their house a certain way, and things will change, but is it a upward trajectory as opposed to downward, where the first generation built a certain amount of wealth and then the future ones destroy it? Or can you go the other way, where the first generation puts the foundation solid and then the future generations just build on that? But thought we'd open with that.
It's a constant battle because I honestly believe that, as let's say, like you say, the first generation acquires a certain amount of wealth. Okay, success, economically speaking. Um, you look at the lives of people that have created a lot. People that come to mind are Messi, you know. Messi didn't, very poor beginnings, but he worked very hard at harnessing the skills. He gives all the credit to God, the God blessed skills that the Lord gave him, you know. Um, but that would not have been enough if he didn't have the drive to harness and, make those skills even better. The other guy I think about is Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano Ronaldo, growing up, was poor as dirt. He talks about going to McDonald's, I don't know, in Brazil or, I mean, in Portugal, uh, and knocking on the back door, and there were ladies there that would give them hamburgers to eat. You know, that's a level of poor that very few people well, there's hunger in America too, but there, I would say, few people, have to live through. And even this guy, Andrew Tate, is that his name? The guy that's been in the news a lot. He's very outspoken, apparently very wealthy. He got put in jail, right? That's his name, right? He was saying that, I think he went to a chicken place, Church's Chicken, or a chicken place, and they would give him chicken, or not Church's, but Colonel
KFC.
Yeah, Sanders, and there was a lady that would give them chicken there, and he says, I had to go there to get my protein. So apparently he was very poor too. But look at these people, just those three that I've mentioned. Look at the level of achievement that they have created. I don't know much about Andrew, but I know a lot about the other two, Messi and Cristiano. And these guys are extremely wealthy, and you have to try to keep a balance, because once you obtain that level of wealth, it's difficult, just out of love, not to want to give everything to your kids. And by doing that, everything seems to indicate that you're harming them. I know that Jordan Peterson would say yes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you teach them to maybe want to build on and continue, and not just live off of what the parents have done?
It's a constant battle, I think.
Yeah.
It's a give and take.
We've seen some examples locally to us in Southern California, like, for example, the Porto's family that has built, the Cuban refugees come here, the parents open up a bakery, right? And then, but it started off, I don't know if she was selling out of her home or like a local little shop. I mean, it was a very small thing. And then it started getting popular, right? And then the cakes were really, really good, and then it just grew from there. But what's been interesting is that the children who also came to this country, I think they also came with their parents from Cuba, were able to build it into something even bigger.
Correct.
And then now it's at the grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I don't think it's in their hands. It's still in control of the children, but which are adult children now, right? But they have been able to maintain the growth and build upon. So I think it's cool to look at examples like that.
Yeah.
And use those as inspiration that, it doesn't have to get destroyed as it happens in some families. It could keep growing. There are a lot of people that, even locally, that have been able to build upon, and I don't know what those families did differently that have allowed them to, it's a combination of things, I'm sure, but have allowed them to prevent the business from falling apart.
Right. And you know, it's a combination of things. It's like if you were cooking a meal. You put a little salt, a little pepper, vinegar, whatever, and then hopefully the meal comes out good, right? Same thing with raising kids. Um, I think it has to do, or one of the ingredients is the environment that you're in. Um, there's this, I like watches, and I look at this, all this stuff about watches, and there's one guy, he's pretty famous. We'll get his name. He's a little older now. He's probably in his 40s. Um, and he shows on YouTube that he flies to Florida for the watch conventions and this and that. But there's a clip that's running around lately about this young man that came to see him. Apparently, when the kid was like 10 years old or 11 years old, and he was already a hustler. And he mentions that by the time this kid was 13, he bought himself his own G-Wagon. Okay? And so, um, it, it depends on your environment.
Mm.
I see kids that grow up in a family of doctors, they have a tendency to become doctors. Kids that grow up in the family of contractors, they have a tendency to become contractors.
Yeah.
Kids that grow up in the family of researchers, they have a tendency to be researchers. I know that maybe some of our listeners may have a different opinion, and I welcome it, okay? If you grow up in a family of gardeners, maybe you fall into that, okay? But for example, there are some industries that you have to be sharp. You have to be on your toes no matter what. And I think the jewelry industry is one of those. The watch industry, the diamond industry. These people have to be precise. The other day I was watching a lady give a presentation on diamonds and the flaws. And when they get cataloged and they, inscribe every little thing that's in the diamond, and she could look at it but with a loop and determine it, you got to be sharp.
Sure.
There was another clip that I saw where a gentleman picked up a watch, and it was supposed to be without the bracelet, just the Rolex. And he said, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right. And so he put on the loop, this and that, and he identified a couple things that were incorrect, and somebody was trying to bring in that watch in exchange for money, saying it was a Rolex. So you just have to be astute. A surgeon, for example, you got to know where to cut.
Yeah.
And if all of a sudden you have a bleeder, you better cauterize it and take care of that bleeder. So
people that are so good at their trade, they've gotten to a point where they're so good, and if they can pass that down to, let's say, their children, at least it gives them a head start in life. Yeah, because they already know how to do some of these things. Like I think of, there's some, we were talking about Coral Castle the other day, and Ed I forgot his last name, Landstegen or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Ed D. Skelton.
Is that how it is?
Yeah.
And he came from a family of masons, right?
Correct.
So
they were builders.
They were builders. So it does explain somewhat as to he had more knowledge than the average person.
For sure.
Because he came from that.
For sure. They were builders back in Latviia.
Yeah.
And his father had a construction company, I believe, and he grew up in that.
Stone. They were dealing with stone somehow.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it definitely is an advantage. And I know with the Porto's family, going back to them, there's pictures and everything at the restaurant that you see the kids were in the kitchens mopping and doing cleaning, and they were working it. So getting them started early or teaching them as they were working. I think as they were growing up, I think is a really good part of it,
Yeah.
because if not, they can come into the business like our friend Carlos, that has his family, his daughter working in the business. It's gotten to a point where he's now able to step away because he's kind of taught her the ropes already, and he's trying to get his son now involved more and more, because if you don't give them, but he's started them at the bottom. He did say that he started them pretty low and they had to move their way up.
Correct.
They don't just start with a high salary position, or just because you're the child of the owner.
Right. And I know that in the case of Porto's, Raul, I believe he went to college and he got his degree in business administration. The other sister has a law degree, and the other sister, I believe she's a CPA. So they went to school, got their degrees, and came back to the family business to work it in different specialties, I think. So yeah, no, you know, you're dead. If you bring one of your sons or daughters into the business and you start them at, you know, a very high position, you're dead.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing better than to learn the business from the bottom up. That's how you really truly learn the business.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how you really truly appreciate what you have.
And for those who, let's say, don't grow up and aren't blessed with the, let's say, parents that are in a business. I forgot who I was talking to recently that said that they're blessed that they were born into a family that had a business. I forgot who. But for those who aren't, look at our conversation today with our other friend, Carlos, how he said he just did his job very, very well. I asked him how he got into the business
Right.
of import and export. And he says, I just did my job really, really well. And then one day when I got offered a position.
So the phrase that he said, I wrote it down because I really liked it. I have it here, but I've got it memorized. He said, you know, you just never know who's looking,
Who's watching?
who's watching you. And when his time came to an end in that position, there was another gentleman that was looking at him and had liked the way he did his job and so forth, and said, hey, what are your, because he had to relocate, because the company gave him, okay, we'll give you this position, but you either have to go to San Francisco or
I think
Florida. Yeah. And he said, I'm not willing to relocate for this. He was young and he didn't want to move from where he was. And so he said, okay, well, and then this other gentleman that have seen him in action over the years said, why don't you come and work with me? This is what I've got. So he said, you never know who's watching you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
good.
just do your job well.
Well,
Treat people with respect. Be
that's another thing he said.
I think
And courtesy
courtesy.
and dignity.
Yeah.
Very interesting. He's a very successful man,
Yeah.
you know, but he's very down to earth. He's cool. Today also we met another gentleman that, you know, he was very much more reserved, and
Yeah.
he didn't want anything to do with us, and that's okay too. You have to respect that, you know.
Yeah.
We're very open and outgoing because we're people, and to me it was very interesting too. And no throwing of any rocks here, but he's in a people business, but he didn't have the time. He's on such a schedule. He didn't have 2 or 3 minutes to dedicate to another potential customer, because I'm a potential customer.
Well, I look at it as people make time for things that are important to them or a priority. And so we value relationships, and we value building new relationships, not just cultivating the existing ones. We like expanding our network, and that's what we do. Talking to people wherever, anywhere, and making new connections. I mean, that's how you survive in business, I believe, because with the law of attrition,
Yeah.
right? If you're not building new relationships, which will lead to new business, eventually all of your clientele will move out of state,
Die off
die
a
off,
certain amount.
change,
Companies.
company. It's gonna happen. And I know every company is different, but I always thought the number was 10% a year. I always thought that was the number. So if you have 100 clients, and just based off of attrition, you need to replace 10%, 10 of them. If you don't replace those 10%, then you're going to be with 90 next year.
Right.
And then if you don't replace those 10%, you're going to be with 81. And then if you don't, and it will keep trickling down until you're left with zero. However, if you're building new relationships and cultivating new business, then you can replace the 10% that you lose from attrition. Not only that, if you build even more relationships, then you can grow.
And that's what scaling is all about.
This gentleman that we met wasn't interested in growing new relationships.
Correct.
Is the way that I see it.
Okay. Makes sense. And by the way, the business will die before you get to zero. You don't have 10 years left. There's an old equation out there that you lose 40% of your business, you're done. So if you don't replace it within 4 years' time, you're done.
Well, that's an interesting point.
Because the revenue is not enough to match the expenses. You've got employees, rents, and so forth and so on. So
the largest expense for a business is typically its employees and its location. So, yeah. And a lot of times that accounts for 50% of a company.
Yeah.
Of a company's revenue.
Yeah. So if, let's say, the attrition is 10% and you don't replace it, in 4 years you're done.
Yeah.
It's not going to wait for you to come down to zero. Yeah.
It's not like you have zero expenses.
Right.
So this person was at a point in his life where maybe doesn't need to cultivate new relationships. You may not need to cultivate new relationships, but you want to, because you're meeting new people, and you like people, and you like hearing people's story. Like, for example, when we were talking to our friend Carlos today, and I asked him, how'd you even get into this business? Import export is like, how do you even get into that? It's such an interesting business to me because I'm not familiar with it.
Right.
And he shared his story. For me, that's a class. It's so interesting.
Absolutely.
How you can plan one thing, but life will take you a certain way.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, some people, and you see it, and you have to respect everyone for their ideals and the way they do things. Some people are more reserved, more serious, like maybe this gentleman that we're talking about in the morning. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. And he has every right to be the way he wants to be. We, on the other hand, we're in the sales. We're salesmen, okay? Anybody that's in the sales business, it's like Cardone says, if they don't know that you exist, they'll never do business with you.
Right.
But if they have an idea where you are, then you have a chance. So that's why Cardone pushes all these platforms like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all this kind of stuff. Because he is on them constantly. Now he's on them. I mean, he's...
Yeah. But it's also providing value.
Right.
Being on there and providing value.
Right. Yeah, because if you don't bring value, then you're an empty sack. You're just not going to... You're not going anywhere. They're going to see right through you, too.
And that's one thing, is that's, I think, what we... And I think people who are in business have been able to be in business for a long time, provide value. Like, going back to Porto's. I was there a few days ago. Everybody's happy there. They're providing value. And for those who don't know who a Porto's is, it's look it up. It's a Cuban bakery. And there's a bunch of them. But everybody's there is happy because they're about to eat.
They're
really
eating.
Good pastries. They're eating. But I was at a Blaze Pizza the other day too, and the line was really long and it was taking forever, and people were very upset getting their pizza. But I've been there when the line's not long. People are very serious there. And so I wonder, like, the culture at Portos is unique. And I know they train on that. But they're providing value. And I think in business, that's what you have to do. You saw an opportunity recently to help a friend who, just with a connection, with a phone call, and you said, hey, do you want me to make this call? I can make this introduction. And it may lead to something, it may not, but you're just trying to provide value to that friend.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I thought would help our businesses a lot when I was much younger. I saw that, for example, this guy needed an attorney, or this guy needed
Plumber.
a plumber, or, exactly, or this guy needed a contractor or something. So what I ended up doing was trying to get to know people in different fields that I could trust them, and then became somewhat like a resource to my clients. My clients call me all the time, not just for real estate or insurance, but for way other different needs, you know? Hey, like today, they asked me, hey, I got a really large bid for repiping this entire building. That's a big job. Do you have any plumber that you trust? Well, your small everyday, plumber and I have those.
Yeah.
But that's a big job
need a
for a big
commercial.
company. I also have a big company that I can refer,
Now the other side of that is when you refer somebody, you're putting your name behind it.
That's
So
right.
you need to make sure, which you have obviously vetted people and worked with them in the past, and you can. But just because they did a good job for you in the past doesn't mean they continue to do a good job.
No.
We've all gone to those restaurants or places that had great service or food, and then all of a sudden something changed. They started buying cheaper meat.
It happened to Mom and I this weekend.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. But it wasn't that the food was bad, it's just that the server,
The service
yeah, she took off and
disappeared.
she disappeared. And I needed something. She needed more hot water. I needed another napkin. And
No.
where is she? She's gone. She's nowhere to be found.
Well, it's funny because I know where the place you're talking about. We won't name it.
No.
But there's a robot in that place
There's a robot in that place.
that goes around picking up tables. So maybe they think the robot is replacing
Well,
the-
no. What happens is they pick the plates and put it on the robot
and then it knows to go back to the dishes.
to the kitchen so that they can wash it. And then, but actually, I haven't seen the robot lately there.
Oh, no?
No,
They got rid of it.
I haven't seen the robot there lately, but I have seen the robot there.
So places like that the service is you got to get all your orders in at the beginning.
But it's
like-
never been like that. It's the first time that it happens. She just disappeared. And we're looking for her. And it's interesting because we could see all the other servers
Oh, okay.
walking around and taking care of their tables, but she just disappeared. And I say, yeah,
it
what do you do?
well, look, we're all human.
We're not one to
We're-
complain.
We're not perfect.
No.
We're not expecting
No.
people to be perfect. However, I have my good buddy Sean who works at a 5-star hotel.
Okay.
That's not allowed,
Oh,
right? So they have measures of accountability where that person would be get a
Reprimand.
warning, and that person would be let go or whatever the case, because the standard is so high in these places. So that's just what it is. If you go to one of these 5-star hotels, you're greeted with a smile at the entrance. I mean, he gave us a tour.
yes. I'll never forget it.
It was, I mean,
Tremendous.
amazing place in the Waldorf, and that was super cool because you see all the levels, the housekeeping, the front concierge, the valet, the way the rooms are.
Oh,
I mean, everything is.
Every detail to
The
perfection.
front door was a crystal. Remember?
Yes,
He
I
was
do.
saying each handle was. I think he was saying each handle was $500,000.
Incredible.
Each crystal handle, not
And
the
there were
door,
two doors.
just the crystal.
There were two doors, so
Two
just
on
the
the
handles on
outside
those two doors, $1 million
and two on
bucks.
the inside.
Oh, four of them.
Yeah.
So that's two for 4
So that's
2 million.
2 million bucks
2 million
on
bucks.
handles.
Just in handles.
So,
Crazy.
but people go there and they expect a certain level of service.
Correct.
And, you know, it was funny because our buddy Andrew was talking about when you get to a certain place in your life, or not even a certain place in your life, but he was referring to coffee specifically.
Okay.
That once you
Oh,
understand what good coffee is, once you understand what good
it's a
coffee
nightmare.
is, yeah, and specialty coffee and all these things, you have a higher expectation to make you happy now. Like your regular coffee at any shop isn't going to do it.
You're done.
You're done. You need to have at home with the right temperature
Oh,
and the
God.
right ground beans and the right beans and the right blend. And anyways, but then I heard, who was it? Somebody. Oh, I think he was saying that every once in a while have a regular cup of coffee so that you can contrast and realize how good the other coffee is.
It depends where your passion takes you.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Not
Yeah.
everyone cares that much about
No.
coffee.
Look, I'm Cuban and I love coffee. I drink 2-3 cups a day. And
You have coffee running through your veins.
you got that. And so, but then again, I'm not that picky. Okay? I think. I mean, you can't give me a real bad. There's some coffees, like they,
I'll drink an instant cup of coffee. Why not?
Yeah, I haven't had instant in forever.
I haven't in a while.
But it's, for example, I like pocket watches, right? So I'm willing to open one up and look at the movement inside
Right.
and try to figure out the movement and then I'll buy it. So the first thing that catches my eye, of course, is, the outside. But I'm not going to buy it until I look at the movement now, because
Right.
now this
You've
is
learned more, so it
part
takes
of my
more
passion. Right.
to.
And the same thing with Andrew and his coffee. I
Well-
mean, we got to bring him back for more
So
coffee.
having back the thing about coffee, which I find interesting, because it's part of our culture, the Cuban culture, the Hispanic Latin culture. It's part of it, but especially the Cuban culture with espresso and cafe cubano and all that,
Like the Italians.
like the cappuccino, Italian espresso maker. But I remember grandma talking about stories and that there was no coffee in Cuba. So you would have to reuse the
Right.
grounds.
Yeah.
So every time that I hear something like that, my mind, just because of the way that I was raised, I think, look, what are we doing complaining about a cup of coffee when over there they're reusing their grounds who knows how many times?
Oh,
Because and there's that one joke that
until there's no grounds left.
until there's that one joke that grandma would say is that when somebody would come over to the house, the daughter would ask the mom, do I make coffee for our guest? And this was planned, right? And the mom would say, yes, sí mija, yes daughter, make coffee, right? And then but she would say, bueno hija, bueno, so make the
Good.
coffee but good.
Good.
Bueno is good. And then if it was a guest that would come over that the mom didn't like, the daughter would ask, Mom, do I make coffee? And the
Clear.
daughter would say,
Like clearly,
claro,
yes.
hija,
Yeah.
claro, which claro
Means clear, so
it,
not
it
so
has
much.
two meanings in Spanish. Clear, like, make it a clear coffee, but it also means yes, of course. So it was a cool little play on words. But if you didn't like the guests, you weren't using a fresh batch of grounds. But that joke right there shows you the mindset and what was occurring in the country at the time. Food was scarce.
Yes.
Coffee was scarce. Other things, milk and other things. And so it's in a joking fashion, but it's of a scarcity.
Yeah.
And I know that Grant Cardone talks a lot about getting out of that scarcity mindset and that
Yes.
miser mindset, because he says that he had, I don't know if it was, he says you've seen those people who are sitting on a ton of money, ton of property, and they don't spend it. And they're just gonna live and they're gonna end up dying and never having spent that money and enjoying it. And hey, it's their money, and maybe they're happy with the money in the bank. But from his perspective, Cardone is saying that's a miser. That's somebody who um, isn't enjoying the fruits of their labor.
Yeah. Well, when you realize how short of a span we have on this earth, and you only live once, you only have one lifetime, right? To do that, when they realize it, they'll come to the conclusion that that is a mistake. You can't take it with you. And if you're planning to leave that to your children, good luck. Because unless you leave them a good, solid base of goals and core values,
Right.
okay, um, that money will be spent away uh, uselessly.
Yeah.
Um, the most important thing that we can leave our children is our time with them, so that we can be with them, love them, show them that there's some. It's not money. It's not money.
No, it's love.
Yeah.
It's principles that you can
Yes.
teach them, lessons.
Core values.
Yeah. Because, and you know what's interesting is that those can last forever
Oh yeah.
if your children begin to teach it to their children and their children teach it to their children. And so, in a way, that could be the greatest gift,
It is.
you know. That we I don't know who said it, was, but I'm sure a bunch of people, but the best present is your presence.
Yes.
And that's a way that you can leave a legacy of something good for the next generations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like the pharaohs believed that they could take it, but they could take their treasures with them, but turns out, well, we don't think they were able to. Who
No.
knows? Cool.
All right.
Wrap it up there.
All right. Thank you.